yeah, I would say, it might be boring, but planning before you start is I think a big key to success, and then obviously executing on your business plan. But first, you need to write it down.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7 and 8-figure businesses, as well as the CEO and founder of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours? Just go to strategymeeting.com. Now, today we have another great guest on the podcast, Tristan Pelloux, if I can say the last name right, or kind of get that accent there. But to introduce you a bit to Tristan, so after high school, did prep school for a couple of years, and then went into business school. Did a couple internships during that period of time, and then graduated, moved off to London, worked for a company, did mergers and acquisitions or M&A for a period of time, and then worked at a bigger bank. I think it was in finance. Part of that job was to work with fintech companies, and then he kind of decided that as his time was up with that bank, moved to Barcelona, Spain, wanted to build something for himself, and is launched and is growing Fintech Review, which is a blog that he's doing on his own job, that it provides a lot of information about fintech, and also doing some consulting and strategy for other companies. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Tristan.
Thank you for having me.
So I did kind of just a quick high-level run through of your whole journey, but maybe now take us back in time to kind of after high school, going to prep school, doing a business school, and kind of tell us how your journey went from there.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, as you said, I went to business school in France, and during that time, kind of they force you to move around. So I did several internships. I went to Jordan in Middle East. Um, I went to south of France. I did an exchange program in the Netherlands in Rotterdam, studying economics. And yeah, in my last internship, I was in M&A in London, and I actually never left. After my internship, I found a job at Virgin Money UK. So worked on a few projects in the corporate strategy team there, mergers and acquisitions, restructuring, innovation projects, a lot of stuff. And yeah, my last job there was focused on developing partnerships with fintech startups and big technology companies. And last year I decided, London was great, my job was great, but it was time to move on. So
now diving into just part of it just for a second. So when you say, deciding it's time to move on, was there something that, hey, I'm just worn out, or I'm working too many hours, or I don't find this interesting anymore, or is more of, hey, I want to do my own thing, or kind of when you decide to make that transition or, move on from it, so to speak, what was the motivation or the trigger, so to speak, of what caused you to move on?
Yeah, I was thinking for a couple of years already that I wanted to build something, to see something grow and get, if it's going well, it's all on you. If it's not going well, it's also all on you.
Right.
Because the thing is, when you work in a big company, you're part of a collective, which is great. But at the same time, it's a collective, so it's less so on how well you're doing and more so on how well your team, the company is doing. So I wanted to lead the charge on something and develop something, and then look back and say, look, I've done this, it's great now. And it's I always thought about this, so I decided it was the right time for me to jump in.
No, definitely makes sense. So now you decide to make that jump, and what made you did you stay in, you moved to Barcelona, Spain as well, right? So what was the motivation? Say, hey, okay, I want to do my own thing. I want to build something and kind of have it as my own. what necessitated the move with that? Was it just, hey, I want a new location, or it's nearby family, want new surroundings, or kind of as you're making that transition, what also prompted you to move?
Yeah, actually, it was more so the other way around. Is I decided to move, as you say, to be closer to my family that is in south of France, and my partner, her family is in Spain because she's Spanish, and so I decided to move. And then once I had moved, I was like, so now I need to do something else. So maybe it's the right time to actually, go on and be an entrepreneur. Um, so it was the other way around, but because there was a move and already a lot of changes, I thought instead of looking for a job, and actually wasn't the best period to look for a job. So I was like, you know what? Actually, right now is the right time for me to start my company.
So no, and I think that definitely makes sense. And hey, if I'm going to start my company, let's go by family. Let's go by people that are going to support and otherwise be there for me as I'm endeavoring on now, taking on a whole new animal, starting my own thing now. As you're doing that, did you know, hey, I worked with fintech. I know I want to go into kind of fintech review and do that as my passion, or kind of was it unknown, or kind of how did you land on or decide what you wanted to pursue or how you wanted to pursue it?
Yeah, exactly. It's more a passion that I decided, I need to make it into a business. I had been following innovation in financial services for as long as I had worked in banking, from my internship days in 2011 to right now. So I really liked the sector. I liked innovation, following that, and then in my job I was working with fintech. So um, I started blogging as I just want to write about it and look at the market and just get my thoughts out. And and actually, when I decided to scale it, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna spend more time on it, see if I can turn it into a real business. And so yeah, it
Hmm.
started from a passion, and I was like, you know what? If I do something I really like, then I won't feel I'm working. And it's actually the case because I really like what I'm doing, what I'm working on. So I don't feel like it's actually work. So that's what I wanted to do.
So now you kind of land on that, decide, okay, I've kind of found where my passion's at, what I'm going to do now. Was there a business plan behind that, how you're going to go about making money, or just saying, hey, I'll follow the passion, the money will, I'll follow my passion, then the money will follow behind that? Or you're saying, hey, I'll do these other side gigs, things on the side, do consulting, working with our business to support this as it up and going? You're kind of, as you're saying, okay, made the leap, want to do my own thing, figured out what I want to do. Now I had to put a business around it. How did you go about starting to kind of build that business around it?
Yeah, so because my previous job was a lot of business planning, I kind of had to do a business plan. So I did plot out how it was going to be like as a business. Uh, but because I knew that it would take a bit of time to scale it to a size that makes it a sustainable business, that's why I continued to this day doing a bit of side gigs as a consultant, because I knew that the economics wouldn't work out for a certain period of time,
Hmm.
and because I wanted to bootstrap. I was like, my way of bootstrapping would be to use my savings and at the same time continue to do side gigs so that I can continue develop my business, and take my time, because I didn't want to rush into aggressive monetization strategies. So and to scare away my little group of fans. So I'm taking my time to develop my business, but there is an actual plan behind it.
Hmm. So that makes sense. So now that kind of brings us a bit up to where you're at today. But now you're saying, so maybe one question before I was going to ask a different question, but one other additional follow-up question. So as you've done that, as you've kind of built things up, as you've, figured out the business plan, as you've started to do that, and also, do the side hustle, so to speak, or ways to have an income and to support yourself. How have things gone? As it, as you've kind of dived into your passion project, started to build it, has it been a success? Has it taken off? Has it been, slower than anticipated? Has it too early to tell, or kind of how are things going so far?
Things have been going great. I think that I've put lots of efforts into it, obviously, and it's been only about 6 months now, so it's still early days. But I guess after Christmas, I found that the growth wasn't there because I guess I hit like not a wall, but around Christmas people were not so much into it. But then really after February, March, and now I'm seeing like good growth in terms of readership. It's like um, over 100% and months on month, so it's going really great. Um, so no, I mean, so far it's been good, and now that I've started introducing more products, so a premium offering, and I'm
Hmm.
starting to develop a bit the content strategy. We'll see how it goes from there. But I think the feedback so far has been really good. I've developed a good base of people that are quite interested in what I'm writing, in the people I'm interviewing, in the content that I'm producing.
Hmm.
And I feel that I found a niche, and that I'm continuing to go into that niche, and it's going well so far.
No, that's awesome. So, and that kind of hits on. So you're developing the niche kind of, and you're developing new products and offering, doing some, premium or premium offerings and, some subscription base. So is that kind of where you see kind of the next 6 to 12 months continuing to head for you as you continue to increase the offering, continue to offer different levels of, service or access, so to speak, and, for different costing, or kind of where do you see the next six, or is that, see the next to 6 to 12 months going for you?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I've introduced. I've introduced 3 levels of membership, and within this membership, I'll continue to build content for each of these levels. So my plan for the next 6 to 12 months is getting more content out for these people, so to kind of get them to talk about it, because I know that like the best marketing strategy at the end of the day is people recommending you, look, you should have a look at that. So that's what I want to do. I want to continue invest my time into building this, whilst I continue to develop also the free bits, because this is how people come to FinTech Review. So I will continue to do that. And and yeah, I think I'm quite clear about the path for the next 6 to 12 months. And I know that we'll continue. I mean, as it gets bigger, and I need less so spend time, doing consulting gigs, I will also have more time to dedicate to create content. And that's why I thought it was the right time to do it now. And I know that, I mean, if the growth is good and continues that way, I know that by the end of the year, I'll be able to almost, put to the side gigs, and then focus much more on that. So we'll see.
Hmm. No, it definitely makes sense and sounds like some interesting, exciting opportunities as you continue to move forward. Well, as we get towards the end of your journey, and I always ask 2 questions at the end, and so we'll jump to those now. And as a reminder for listeners, we're also going to be chatting a bit about intellectual property as a bonus questions after the normal episode wraps up. So if you want to hear that discussion in bed, make sure to stay tuned. But as we hit a normal 2 questions, the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what's the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
I think that it might sound silly, but I think the worst decision was not to start earlier, in the sense that this could have been a side gig for much longer, and actually I didn't put enough time and efforts as it was a side gig, because I technically started it in January last year, but for 6 9 months I was just writing very periodically, and I wasn't putting enough efforts. And looking back, I feel that if I had started much more, to write much more, to develop my social media accounts where most of my traffic is coming from, this is things that I could have done. I could have started a year ago, and I waited. I waited way too long. I waited to be like free to do it, whereas I could have started much more before. So I think this was the biggest mistake I've made, which was, I mean, because now the thing is, it takes time anyway. So it's not something it's not something I can get back. Is that it's going to take me probably, 3 months to get where I should have been, or 6 months. And the thing is, I could have got this, I could have started earlier. So yeah, this is the worst thing I felt I've done.
Hmm. No, and I think that definitely makes sense as far as kind of the mistake, but the lesson that's also learned there, and getting started earlier and then focusing on it, be able to build it and be able to put more time into it, and all those things always play into it. And always one where it's, if you'd only started earlier, if you'd only done a few things, it would have, you'd be so much farther ahead today, so to speak. Now, as we jump to the second question, which is, if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
I think I would tell them to plan. So I'm as a side gig, what I do is that I do strategy consulting. So I'm helping entrepreneurs build business plans, and I always tell them is that, even if it's just for you, you should have a plan, because it's business plans are not only to get a bank loan or to get funding from an investor. It's also for you to know where you're going, and it might take a bit of time. It doesn't need to be very complicated. It can be just a few pages, but just lay out exactly what's the idea, what's your market, what's your product, where you're going with this. And it's really good, because as you do that, you will realize that some assumptions you have are not working out, because the market is not the ones you wanted to. Because the worst thing that can happen is that you just jump in, and then you realize you lose a bit of time, or a lot of time, because you realize that you're not going in the right direction. So, but yeah, I would say, it might be boring, but planning before you start is I think a big key to success, and then obviously executing on your business plan. But first, you need to write it down.
No, I think that's definitely good advice for people to take to heart. Well, as we wrap up the normal portion of the episode, and a reminder, we'll also talk in a couple minutes just about intellectual property. But if people want to reach out to, they want to find out more about fintech, they want to be a subscriber, they want to be a listener and a consumer, they want to be an investor, they want to be an employee, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out, connect up, and find out more?
So on any social media accounts that are out there, so Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Otherwise, hello at fintechreview.net. I'll answer everything. But yeah, various ways to reach out, or directly to me on LinkedIn. I'm also happy to have a chat, have a digital coffee, or a real one if you're somewhere not too far.
All right. Well, that sounds like some great options to reach out, connect up, and find out more. So appreciate you coming on, Tristan, to the podcast. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you have your own journey to tell, or you want to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to share your journey. Feel free to go to inventiveguest.com and apply to be on the podcast. Two more things as listeners. One, make sure to click subscribe in your podcast player so you know when all of our awesome episodes come out. And two, leave us a review so new people can find out about us. Last but not least, if you ever need help with patents, trademarks, or anything else, just let us know, and go to strategymeeting.com and grab some time with us to chat. Well, now as we've wrapped up the normal episode, it's always fun when we do the bonus question to flip the tables a bit and talk about a topic that I always certainly find interesting, whether or not everybody else does, which is intellectual property. So it's fun to hear a few of the questions that other people have always had and discuss that a bit. So with that, I'll turn it over to you for a bit and or let you ask, what is the top intellectual property question you have?
Yeah. So what's your take about online content when it comes to intellectual property? So my business is to create content. Some of them is free, and I just wondered, because my viewership is very much international. I mean, my company is incorporated in the UK. I'm in Spain. Most of my viewership, the over 40% is in the US. So I'm just wondering in terms of, someone comes in, copy everything, put it on his blog, and what's happening, even if it's not a paid. So I guess there are two things. If it's a free article, what happens if he does that? If it's a paid article, like he should be a member, but actually someone comes in, he's a member, copies the content, send it to his friend. How does this actually work?
Yeah, so I think that there's a couple ways to divvy that up in the sense of what are your legal rights and then what are some of the practical implications of it. So if you're to look at, somebody comes in and whether or not it's paid content, you still have the same rights. The only difference may be that you can show a bit more damage is that, hey, I normally charge $100 for this content. You're sharing to other people. Therefore, you can see I lost out on $100, so to speak, on that or whatever that number is. But as far as, when you have a copyright, when you create something, whether or not you charge for it, you still have copyrights to it. So particularly like on a blog and content and pictures and all that information falls under copyrights. And so you have inherent, by creating it, you have rights to that, which are called copyrights. And so from a perspective, whether or not you're selling it or not, you still have those rights. And unless you give those, give somebody a license or otherwise allow them to have those rights or allow or give them permission to copy that, you still own those rights and they're not able to come and simply rip it off or copy it. So in that sense, now you can say, okay, I can go and enforce my rights. I can go and everything from reaching out to them, letting them know, to a cease and desist letter, to something more aggressive with a lawsuit or whatnot. But you can certainly defend those rights. And if there is an example, if they're harming your business or they're reducing your income or anything else, you can go after them. Now the practical implications are a bit different in the sense of, yes, they are technically infringing your copyrights. Now you have to decide how you want to pursue them or what makes sense in the sense of, hey, if they're a subscriber and they go and share it with a friend or two and you're saying, okay, one, it may help my business in the sense that if the friend or two likes it, they may go get a subscription themselves. Now, if they're sharing it repeatedly or they're, doing it all the time, such that you're never going to realize that income, then you're starting to have the opposite implication. And then you have to balance, okay, is it better to potentially alienate the one individual that, or whoever it is as a subscriber that is paying in order to try and get the money from the other individuals? Well, it kind of depends on, hey, is this somebody that's taking the content, copy and pasting, and putting it on their own site, and now they're they're getting thousands of subscribers. Well, it's probably going to hurt you in the sense, and now they're going to your competitors opposed to you. First, if it's an individual that's sharing it for a friend or two, so it's almost a balance of how much harm are they doing. What is the reward that they, if I go after them or otherwise get them to stop? And then is it a worthwhile investment of time, money, and effort in order to get them to stop? And that's going to be kind of your balance. So that's kind of the legal rights are. You have legal rights to protect with copyrights on the point of should you go in and enforce it or otherwise or enforce those rights. It a bit depends on who's doing it and how they're doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does make sense. It does make sense.
All right.
I think it's all clear.
Awesome. Well, it was a fun to chat a little about intellectual property. And if you or anybody else ever has any other questions, you want to chat with us or ask your top intellectual property, feel free to go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. We're always here to help. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up the podcast. And thank you again, Tristan, for coming on. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.